It's an absolute privilege to be here to talk with one of the enduring icons of Indian cinema, Sharmila Tagore. And equally special because we have Soha here, who's one of, I think, a very multi-talented girl and one of our big talents from the next generation in cinema, in the OTT platform, where she's impressing with great performances, and we're looking forward to more. So I'll open this up.
And social media also.
Social media, she's a writer.
Right now, you can follow me at It's all about social media, right?
And also, I think if anyone's inherited your father's wit and humor, you've done that. I mean, conversation and writing and observations, and even being in the thick of glamour and still talking about, talking from an outsider's point of view. If you've read her book, even her chapter on the book on your father is just so good, so good. You have to write more. And very soon you'll direct, I'm sure. So we're going to start at the very beginning. I'm going to take a few questions to start a conversation, and then we'll open up to questions from you, members of the audience. And I'd like to start with Sharmila Di, because that's what I call her. It's good, as I said, to start right at the top. And for you to have 7 decades of cinema reigning still, and back with Gulmohar, and now with so many commercials. I mean, I just landed this morning, and on TV, you're like there all the time, and your beautiful faces being seen again, which is great. But let's start with the 50s. And let's start where you, as a 13-year-old, started your career being cast in Satyajit Ray's Upur Sangsar. Tell us about that story. What was the attitude towards cinema in the 50s in your family, which is a branch of the Tagore family? It's the painter's side of Tagore's family, but nonetheless, a Brahmo family, a very erudite and well-known family. What was the attitude towards theatre, cinema, entertainment?
Well, that one question will take 2 hours. But we are not from the Brahmo side of the family, because Tagore's father, Debendranath Tagore, changed his religion and became Brahmo. And so there was a kind of division, and the deity of the house went to the other house. So there was this 5 number and 6 number, and Gyananandini took it away. And Devendranath's wife became a bit lonely at that time, because women of the family those days, kitchen and also the puja ghar was the place where that was their activity center. So when the other house, shaak bachche, and what is shaak? Conch shell, etc. used to happen, she was very isolated. So we come from the Brahmin family. As you said, the painter's family, Abhinendranath, Gaganendranath. Gaganendranath brought Cubism to India. And Abhinendranath, of course, there's a painting of his at the Louvre also, very famous watercolors. And Baroda Ukil, Sharada Ukil, they went to, many Chugtai, for instance, went to Pakistan and reigned there. So that was a watercolor kind of gharana. So
Also Bharat Mata.
And Bharat Mata, of course. How can we forget? Absolutely Bharat Mata. So coming back to Satyajit Ray, at that time, India became independent in 47. So this was just 10 years down the line. So it was, we grew up. Now people sing film songs and things when they go for picnics, or some kind of Western pop songs. But we all sang Dhono Dhanne Pushpe Bhara, or other Akla Chalo Re, that kind of patriotic songs. Those were our songs. So that was the mindset. At the same time, people, girls especially, always it's the girls especially, but not working was frowned upon, and then working in films was doubly frowned upon. But Satyajit Ray had broken grounds. He was already an international fame. With his first film, he won prizes abroad. So he was very, the gentries, the middle class, looked up to him. So it was one of those absolutely momentous accident that one day Manikda called. Manikda, Satyajit Ray, we all of us called him Manikda. There was a call from him. I was staying with my grandparents because my father had a transferable job. So he felt that it was preferable to leave me with and thank God he did, because it was a joint family. It was such a pleasure growing up because we learned so much, you know. I'm going to digress. Please stop me, whoever gets bored with this. And, you know, sharing and tolerance, the whole world is looking for it, right? And it came to us so easily because we never had any room of our own, these guys won't understand because they've grown up in the lap of luxury, and their children even more so. Before they ask for, there are 20 toys, and, you know, every day somebody's sending us something. So we didn't even have all that. We had to improvise our entertainment, you know, ulattu and curry and whatever, you know, that pittu, you know, those things that you, anyway. And then there's this room full of cousins. So what a lovely childhood I've had. So anyway, in this atmosphere, and we were not allowed to see films. We were not allowed to go and see films. So the phone rang and my grandfather answered the phone. And Manikda was on the other side, asking for me to be part of Apu Shangshar, World of Apu, to play a child bride, Aparna. And it was a very famous play, well-read book, Amatir Bepu. So all of us had read it. We were all voracious readers at home. And if I could play Aparna. And very strangely, my grandfather immediately said yes, and then looked at my grandmother. And my grandmother sort of didn't take a minute to say yes, because everybody had seen Pather Panchali by then, and they thought the, you know, world of Satyajit Ray. Of course, nobody asked me. That was a different thing, because as a 13-year-old, children never have any vote, right? So that's how it happened. And it was, at that time, I didn't even appreciate what was happening, you know? And working in that film, and when the film released, the kind of ovation, the kind of praise it received, just changed my life. I was, overnight, became heartthrob of Bengal at the age of 13. And of course, my father insisted that it shouldn't interfere with my education. So I left, I didn't continue to work in films. And he said, of course, there's no question of getting paid. And if you think she's making an ass of herself, please don't take her. But I didn't make an ass of myself. And so that's how it happened. But at that time, I really didn't appreciate. I went back to, and the next year he asked me to work in Debi, which I think is my best film in the 65 odd years. I would rate it my best film. And that happened at the age of 14. Again, I didn't have a clue what I was doing because he treated me in sort of big close-ups. And long after the film is over, you're haunted by that face of Debi. So that was again. And then when I came back, I was inundated with offers. I joined college for about 3 months because I didn't want to give up, my peer. I mean, everybody else I was meeting was 33 years old and very old, right? So at that age, 33 is very old. And didn't want to lose touch with my friends. But when I went to college, they would say, "Aaj Uttam Kumar ne kya kiya?" Or one lot. And the other lot said, "Oh, she's an actress. We don't want to talk to her." So I didn't really have the kind of life I was looking at. Then I wanted to do history honors, and Mother Ansela would say, "No, do a pass course." I said, "Listen, I want to do honors." So I said, one day I just threw my books at her and just left. And my mother was terribly worried because what about your two sisters? They won't get into Loreto. But I said, I told her, I said, after 30 years, I'll see which one of your students, I'll know more about history than them. So, so that's how it happened. And then, of course, Bombay happened also. Long answer to your short question.
No, but it's lovely because I'm sure a lot of people here will find this a pleasant reminder of the 50s, and perhaps a lot of us had parents from that generation. So young men and women in the late 50s and 60s really looked at Oppo and Apurna as the romantic couple, and that's how it's been.
Even now in Kolkata, Shomitra and Sharmila, really,
yeah, very enduring.
Yes.
But then you have this move to Bombay, or offers coming in from Bombay, and then you came and stayed at the Taj for a long time when you were filming, and with older actors, as you said. Shami Kapoor was much older when you did Kashmir Ki Kali and Evening in Paris.
Because I had no idea about housekeeping, and my mother had two other children, two daughters, and she couldn't really chaperone me. So I preferred to stay in a hotel, and Taj was a lovely hotel. And I stayed there for about 2-3 years till Shakti ji said, "Well, this is too much. You should live in what is this? A heroine, unchaperoned, living in a hotel. It doesn't look nice." So nobody was looking at my comfort level. And then when I started keeping house, my father said, "Well, when you go to Rinku's house," that's my pet name, "you have to take a clean towel and a clean bed sheet," this, that, and the other. So that's when I shifted. But what was fun was every time I came back from work, often quite late, I would meet the hotel detective. And then we'd have a nice 15 minutes gossip. Because everybody thinks that they go to a hotel and, they're kind of, nobody knows what's happening. But the detective knows everything. So I was absolutely on top with all the latest gossip, what was happening in Bombay at that time.
And then came Evening in Paris, and you break another wall or ceiling with the bikini on front page.
I don't think at every forum I'm always asked about this bikini. And now I'm 78.
So much part of your filmography.
Yeah. But, and again, this is what happens. When a lot of people don't actually see the film, right? And by telling something, it almost becomes a true thing. I didn't wear a bikini in Evening in Paris. I was very, like proper swimming costume, and Nutan had worn it before. Then I was not the first one to wear a swimming costume. And before Evening in Paris, in Amne Samne had also did water skiing on the Dal Lake when there was actual water there. It was a proper lake and you could ski. So yes, so bikini was my idea. I was young, I was 21, I think. And even the photographer said, "I don't think this is quite, heroines don't do these things." So I said, "Well, why not? In Kolkata I swim and it's all right." So I did it. But when it actually Filmfare cover was published, there was a tremendous backlash. And I was really unnerved. Shakti ji sent for me because Shakti Samanta introduced me to Hindi films, and also was not a paternal, at least like an uncle to me. And he had the right to tell me what is right, what is wrong. Like he told me, you cannot stay in hotel for you have to move and settle down. So he gave me a long lecture that if you want a career in this, you can't do this and you can't do that. So I still hadn't seen what I'd done. But when I realized the impact of it, and then I felt that perhaps, my ideas and other people's ideas are not in the same wavelength or same level, because I had grown up in Kolkata with a different kind of freedom, a different kind of a sense of self. And at that time in Bombay, heroines wore white, were chaperoned, and there were, if they had alcohol at all, it had Coca-Cola in it. So sort of double dose of calories. And so there was a way of life for heroines. And after Kashmir Ki Kali's rap, Robert Dance Master asked me for a dance, and I got up and danced. Again, I got a bollocking from Shakti ji, heroines don't dance. I said, all right, you dance on the screen, but not in real life. And so we sat down. And so I kept learning as I went along, making tremendous faux pas, tremendous, stuff like that. And by that time, I had already met Tiger. So Tiger was in London. In those days, there were only telegrams. And if you had the patience to make a call, a lightning call took about half an hour. And then it went to London, perhaps via Dubai, Singapore, Canada, wherever. And then you couldn't really hear each other. And you spoke to the operator. So the operators were very much part of our love story. And we had to invite them to our wedding, especially the one in Beirut. He said, don't be so upset. It's all right, it'll be fine. Because this was immediately after that. That was another story in Evening in Paris. But anyway, so where were we? What was I talking about? I think I've covered
talking about the 60s and your growing fame and reputation.
Bikini. So the bikini, so the fact is that it was not in Evening in Paris. It was my doing with a photographer. And I learned my lesson. Apparently questions were asked in Parliament also. The morality of Indian women and etc. So the times were so different. And if you really wanted to be taken seriously, then you're not alone. Your audience is very much a part of, their acceptance matter. So after that, there was a conscious decision to do films like Aradhna, etc. They were. So I realized that if you really want to be liked by them, then you have to win their respect. Because glamour is kind of skin deep.
And then, of course, in the 70s, you were the leading lady. And that's when we were very small and we were growing up on films like, not even Aradhana. We weren't allowed to see Aradhana, but we saw Amar Prem.
You were not allowed to see Aradhana?
No, I think we were very small.
Oh, so that's okay.
And also,
maybe you
had
really
this
not
choice
right.
Of a single unwed
There was
mother.
something about, having a baby before marriage, yes.
And Aagale Lag Ja, and those roles came to you. But Amar Prem, again, a literary adaptation and such beautiful songs. That's really one of the most important memories that I have of Hindi cinema. And then Safar and Daag, Avishkar a little later, such glorious films. But, it's at this time in the 70s, you were also going back to Calcutta and working with Ray. So juggling this world of fame and celebration and the other very matter-of-fact and very rigorous director like Ray, how did you do this?
When I was working I'd signed Aradhna, and middle of shooting Aradhna. Those days, again, the money was not in place. All these bankers here would know that there was no, bankers didn't think film was a very lucrative So they didn't invest. So we used to get our money for I God knows what. But I think people like B.R. Chopra, Raj Kapoor, Shantaram, you could count them on your fingertips. And their films, the moment they announced, was sold to various areas, yeah. So, distributors. So, so when I've lost it again. What were we talking about? You asked me a question.
Just talking about how you were balancing this work fame.
So when I was working in Aradhana, in middle of it, it was taking a couple of years to be made. Manikda called me and said he offered me the role in Aurunit Din Ratri. Somebody was, while introducing, was talking about it, Days and Nights in the Forest, and it required 1 month at a stretch. And that was clashing with that Sapno Ki Rani being shot in Darjeeling. And Rajesh Khanna's dates were impossible to get, you know, because he was working with 12 producers who had introduced him, the United Producers, because in the talent contest that Rajesh Khanna had won. So they had their 2 films were already pre-signed. So his dates were impossible. But I rang up Shakti Ji. I said, Shakti Ji, Manikda has offered me this role and I'm going. So Shakti Ji, of course, pulling his hair out, but said, yes. So Kaka's scenes, Rajesh Khanna's scenes with Sujit Kumar was shot in Darjeeling, and my scenes were shot in the studios with the back projection and all that. So that was a huge compromise, and I think I would have been sued in today's time. But because Aradhana became such a huge success that everything was forgiven, and I was repeated in his later films. So I managed to do Aurunit Din Ratri, which became internationally acclaimed film. Like if you go to France even today, there's everybody loves that film. It speaks to the Western audience better because all of you probably are not aware or not familiar with Ray films, but the alienation of a certain society from another society, that kind of alienation of city people from their environment, the Western audience were more familiar with it, so it did much better there. And of course, Aradhana became a success here, so I was very pleased that I could do both. So now you better ask Soha, because I have to live with her.
To say
Otherwise, there'll be problem, because I will, yes.
No, but chronologically, Soha's not yet born. So we'll break chronology here. But how was it, Soha, for you to grow up in a family with famous parents and both working and both being away for long periods of time, I presume?
I remember missing her a lot then, obviously. And we would write letters. And I would write to her every day until my father said it's too expensive to send letters every day to America. And so he would, I think, send them every Sunday. And that was the time when I was... otherwise, she was around. She was a member of the PTA and took part in bake sales and was on the school, administration, sort of very visible, dropped me to school, and very hands-on. My father, as I said, I don't think I was aware of their celebrity. We also grew up in Delhi. When my paternal grandmother became unwell, we moved from Bombay to Delhi to be with her. And went to a normal school, very unfilmy upbringing. And I think only when I moved to Mumbai and when we actually went to Harvard to speak about films, I thought, I should do some research. And I started watching films from Do Bika Zameen and, films that I had not seen growing up. When I actually read about Amma and Abba as well and understood, what it was like to work in those days and the films that they'd been a part of and what it must have been like to be a professional actor in those days. And that's when I also became aware of, their status and their celebrity. It was really much later in life. So growing up was, according to me, perfectly normal.
you got to see a lot of commercial cinema. Did you see cinema?
No,
Not at all.
Not at all. We used to watch, like my father's taste in cinema, which was sort of the 39 Steps and Guns of Navarone. And those were the films that we grew up watching. And there would be, this was also in 86, we moved to Delhi. There was like Chitrahar and
84.
84 we moved to Delhi. And, I was 6 years old or 5 years old or something. And television was not this sort of 24/7 entertainment that exists today where you turn on, you can find anything and, you spend hours deciding what to watch and then you get tired and turn it off. So you'd had to really sit down on a Sunday from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock and watch children's entertainment geared for children. So it wasn't really like growing up watching cinema. And also, Amma did a lot of tragedies. There was either she was dying or everyone around her was dying and there was a lot of crying. So it wasn't really like enjoyable to watch as a child, except for Chupke Chupke, which was fun.
Yeah, that's. But you also, you went in for higher studies and did your masters. And how did you become this accidental actress?
I think I should tell.
I don't know if your understanding of it is accurate, but you can, yeah, sure.
I should. You see how it happened. She was working. She was a banker. Well, first, of course, after her.
That's why. Because banking was just pushed me into cinema.
After her undergrads, after Oxford, she came to India and worked with Ford Foundation for a while. And then she went for her master's. And then I wanted her to go to Harvard. But she says, I don't want to conquer the world. So I was kind of speechless after that. I think it had something to do with a friend who was a boy. I think perhaps that was the reason. She thought that was a long time ago. And so anyway, so she didn't go. So she joined, again, she was working with Citibank because, there was an opportunity to go abroad, etc. And started at a kind of quite a respectable level. And at that time, we went around looking at all the paying guest accommodation here. And I think I wasted about 4 days, and she went along with me everywhere. Finally, she decided to stay with Bhai, Saif. So naturally, there was a lot of influence there from... And then I think my Sabha had some health issues. So we were going to America, and I was in the plane when one of her friends said, hello, Auntie, how are you? I said, I'm fine, thank you. So, you know that Soha is joined, she's signed a film. So I said, no, I don't know anything about that. I thought she was working in Citibank last time I saw her. So that's how I was informed in the plane that she had started working.
I mean, this is in case there are any... It's not a good idea to make life-changing decisions without informing your parents. You should let them know. I was aware of the fact that this decision would not go down very well with them. That also invested heavily in my education. But I also do believe that that will never be wasted. And education is an end in itself. I feel that I always enjoyed acting. I enjoyed theatre. I didn't know very much about films and acting in movies, but I felt that I wanted to try. I was offered a Bengali film, a small Bengali film, and I thought this would be the right way to try and see if it works. I didn't really understand that it would be, that so many people would be interested, so many people would be waiting to criticize you, compare you. I thought this is just my journey by myself, which of course it's not. I had worked in Citibank. It was really not for me. I'd worked in the development field, which I did enjoy, but I knew that acting in films would be something that if I wanted to do, I should do when I'm young and less wrinkled. And then, I can always go back to the development world later. And I thought, let me try one. And if I enjoy it, maybe I'll do more. And if I don't enjoy it, then I can just quietly go back to it. I didn't tell them because you're a little bit scary sometimes, and at least you used to be. And I think my father, I suspected, would have been slightly disappointed in my choice. And most daughters really don't want to disappoint their fathers. And so my tendency is to avoid confrontation and, sign the contract when they're on a 16-hour flight and then deal with it later.
How was that experience? I remember you could rattle off the dialogues because you just memorized them by heart.
Well, I was fortunate that in my first role, she was pretty mute. Didn't have to speak very much at all. And Amma actually, after she came round, helped me with the Bengali films that I did by actually recording the lines for me. And I would listen to them because I'm not fluent in Bengali. And I would listen to them. And when I do something, I'd like to work. So I like to be prepared. And I like to get my lines in advance. And that's what people do these days, as opposed to in Amma's time, where I think that they would be scribbled on pieces of paper and given to you.
Yeah, there were
2
no
minutes
scripts.
before. There was no script. Now we have bound scripts and people have readings and, it's very professional, more or less. And then, of course, you get to the set and everything changes still. But, so I did learn my lines. It went well. The Bengali film was good. The first Hindi film, not so good. I remember the first review that came out in one of the papers was that she looks like her mother, but she acts like her father. And I think my father was the one who was most offended by it because he was like, what does this mean? What do you mean? And to get, sort of I was always a straight A student. I was doing very well at Citigroup. I was doing very well in the world. And to have a review that is not flattering and for it to be read by everyone is quite mortifying, But then you get used to it. And social media makes you even more tough. So I think anyone who is aspiring to be in the limelight or to be an actor, you develop a tough skin quite quickly. And then you should ideally not be too affected by someone's opinion of you.
Well, my way of dealing with it, now, of course, social medias, we didn't have that, but we had magazines and Screen and what else was there? Filmfare. Were very respectful, Often it was Miss Tagore or, Sharmila ji and that kind of thing. And then came Star and Style, which was okay. But there was one particular journalist, she's no longer there, so I can talk about her, Devyani Chawal, who was terribly caustic and hurtful. And then, of course, Shobha De came into the picture. And then it became Hinglish. So I became La Tagore and Hema Malini was called something else. We were all given these names. And it became more and more gossipy and more intrusive. And I remember there was a lady who was editor of either Star and Style or Cineblitz or something. And when she came, the roles were flipped and I had to be the journalist, reporter asking her questions. So after my fourth question, she started losing her temper. And then, how dare you ask me such personal questions? I said, but you do all that to us all the time. So then it became very tough. And I did tell her that one thing she did when she was very young is to burst into tears at every criticism or something. And she would start crying. I said, well, now you're becoming a professional. And if that sort of thing happens, you're not going to cry. You're going to just take it on your chin and just move on and learn from it if you can. Because if you're in this profession, you have to be able to deal with the publicity and what other people are talking about you. Because you, like in tennis, I think McEnroe, somebody said, you're just one person. And there are hundreds and thousands of people. You can't take them on. You can't. It's not one-on-one. So you just have to learn. And how I dealt with is that I wouldn't read that first thing in the morning. So if by the time somebody else came and told me, this is what they're saying about you, it hurt less. Let's put it that way. Otherwise, to wake up in the morning and to read something so unfair and something that you are not. Or on the other way, the other side, they also built you up into such a, this nymph-like figure, kind of floated in, and I mean, as if you're not a human being at all. So it's either that or brickbats. So you have to keep a level head and get on with your life.
But is it harder now, Soha, with social media being what it is? Because you're on the phone and things are trickling in all the time.
I don't know. I like to see the advantages of things like social media, and that at least it gives you a voice to speak directly to people. So you can't really get misquoted anymore because you can clarify things immediately. Of course, a lot of people feel like when it comes to film actors, they like a certain sense of enigma and mystery, and those days when you used to have premieres and red carpets and people used to line up and come in crowds to catch a glimpse of someone. That now is, you see, no makeup looks and them going to the gym and them, having coffees and, whatever. There's some people feel that now with social media, that aura of mystery has been taken away. And perhaps the age of stars will no longer remain as a result. But for me, I've enjoyed social media. I feel at least in terms of like during the lockdown, during COVID, it enabled people to still communicate, stay in touch, earn money. It's, you do so much that is positive through social media. You can, as I said, have a voice and talk about things directly to your fans or the public. And then it's up to you to engage how much you want to engage. And you can read the comments. I often read the comments. I'm genuinely not so affected by what people say. I do believe in, your right to your opinion. And it doesn't really touch me beyond a point. I think perhaps over the years, I have developed a tougher skin. And what matters to me, of course, are the opinions of people who actually know me and whose opinion I respect. But as I said, I enjoy social media. I think that what's worrying for me as a mother now is the fact that you have to remember that sometimes what you see is not completely the truth. It's what people want you to see of their lives. And there's not always 100% honesty in that. And with the filters and with, everyone now trying to look good, that's worrying because I see so many girls, especially in my daughter's school and friends. She's very young now, but it's coming soon, where they have issues with, with just confidence and insecurity and this requirement of validation from other people. Like taking a picture, like you have to take a picture of the moment and then the other people have to tell you and like it. And, otherwise you feel like, you haven't got enough followers, you haven't got enough likes. So that really has a sort of psychological impact. It must. I mean, if it affects me, and I see my followers drop or I'm trying to, better that, then imagine for someone who's much younger and less perhaps strong, it's still in a formative stage what it must do to them. So that worries me, that aspect of it. But, I think that through conversations and what they're teaching you now in school also is learning how to use social media responsibly and equipping you to handle the new sort of world that we're in, which I think are very important, lessons now that we need to equip our children to deal with this from a very young age.
What about cyberbullying?
Cyberbullying? What about it?
What about it? I mean, how do children cope with that?
Well, I mean, again, Inaya is too young to be exposed to this. But I feel that you have to say, one of the things I think is when it comes to social media is you have to say no to your child. When it comes to access to the phone, access to things, some of us struggle with saying no and we want to indulge our children. A lot of us do it out of guilt also because we're working parents and, the time that we get to spend with our children, we want to be positive, happy people in their lives and not strict all the time. But I think that social controls as well are important in terms of what they're allowed to see, what forums they're allowed to access. And what is most important, I think, is having communication with you and your child so that anything that is happening in their lives, they should feel comfortable telling you. And knowing that you may not agree with them, but that you'll always be on their side, that you will always help them and support them. Even if you may not say that what you're doing is right. And they may be scared, but they should, I feel, come to you first. And that's what I try and tell Inaya, that even if you've done something wrong, tell me. And, there's bullying in school. These are things that I don't know about online, as I said, because that's not something. But even when it comes to bullying at school, at this age, of course, she's 5. So they're saying there's no such thing as a bad child. There's bad behavior. And even when it comes to bullying, you don't ostracize the bully. You don't punish them and make an example out of them. You, in fact, try and integrate them into society, try and understand what is happening with them, and try and work it out in a way. So I think it comes together with the school, with the parents, with, it requires more of a
It's no
comprehensive
longer
approach.
sort of a blanket no, or saying that do this because I'm telling you to do it. It's more negotiation and more navigating that space. But I think that it's a huge concern going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, the way you dealt with motherhood and the way you saw her dealing with it must be very different experiences. And also the world that you're in. I mean, tell us about how you think cinema or the film industry has become more open. Women have, is it an equal playing field? What is it?
I think now everyone's having these conversations. I do think that certainly, perhaps since your time, we have come a way where women are not just accessories. I mean, you have also done very significant roles, but perhaps it was exceptional then to have, a role where that is a woman protagonist. In those days, of course, you also had medium budget films. Now you have very big budget films and very small budget films when it comes to distribution. The OTT platform has, of course, opened up things, and I can see myself as a woman in her 40s being represented more or less accurately on screen, for the first time. I can also see myself feeling that there is work for me in my 40s, because there was a time, and, we would joke about it, when you were either the heroine or you were the hero's mother. And they didn't know what to do with you in your 40s. So they'd say, do something for 10, 15 years. And then, when you're old enough and you look like a mother, then we have some work for you. And now that's not the case at all. So I think both in terms of women on screen, women behind the screen, as well as women consuming content. Because when it comes to the OTT platform as well, who's watching it? How much is this actually getting to, when we say, this is changing lives, who's watching these films that are empowering films? Are the women who really need to be empowered watching it? Or are the women who are already empowered just watching it and it's resonating with them? But how much will it actually change India and the lives of women in rural areas where perhaps, the internet is not even reached? So we still have a long way to go. But certainly for me, whether it's bound scripts, whether it's, women, like opening, the weekend in theaters, that's happening. Having great roles, having author-backed roles. Of course, people are now talking about things like equal pay. And perhaps in your time, that was not thought about
Considered
at all.
But also there are so much women representation, not just in front of the screen.
Yes.
But, as DOPs or assistant
And it's a mandate.
directors.
For certain things like Amazon, for example, it's a mandate for them to have 50%. And when you look for women screenwriters, you'll find them. And when you're told that you need to have them, and when you employ women in senior positions, then they will also employ women. And it'll break many barriers. So I think that certainly, we're making progress.
But on the other hand, on the TV scene, when you're saying, because I'm a member of BCCC, and what we see is so repressive, so regressive, and it makes out women are women's worst enemies. The men are just in the periphery and they're just walking around, the mother-in-law torturing a daughter-in-law with putting, this very hot thing on her tongue, or a very heavy weight on her leg. Then she's pushed down from the first floor, and then when she's lying there gasping, the mother-in-law puts her foot on her, that sort of thing. Then children being nasty to each other. So all kinds of things in color TV, ZTV, and these are all, and when they're sent for, when we call them to explain, send notices, etc., they come in, say some bizarre things, because, eventually we have to show the bad things before it becomes good. So in the 72nd episode, this will become, I said, by that time, I mean, how much of this people would have consumed? So it's like a huge difference from OTT, regular TV. So it's so that also exists, you know. So, I mean, India is right now there's so many things happening at so many levels. And so it's like we have to be continuously vigilant. And also, I think this is a very good forum to talk about, is like we have media, we have literacy, we have you have to be numerate. But I think media literacy is very important today, because you must be able to read the subtext of a film, because films are huge influencers. So I think the audience must be discerning and support films that are really, trying to say something different, as opposed to just become mere consumers and just support any film.
Yeah, true. It's a good place to open this up to the audience and take some questions. One here. She'd love to, but she's not got the question yet. Not yet. Yes. No questions. Are there someone though?
This for Soha. Weren't you scared at all? Would you measure up to your mom? Did that thought never cross your mind?
I just knew that I wasn't going to enter that competition at all. That was not my intention. My intention was to do my own thing. And of course, comparisons were made. But as I said, you should read my book. It's called The Perils of Being Moderately Famous, and I've spoken at length about what it's like to belong to a family of superstars. What I was very thankful for was that there was no pressure from my parents to excel, because that can become problematic. And they supported me. They wanted me to study. They said, now that you're well educated, the idea is that you are empowered to make your own choices. So now you make your choices. That's what we've taught you to do, helped you to do. And so if this is your choice, then we'll support you. And if you make mistakes, we're there to guide you, etc. But now you live your life. And of course, as I said, comparisons and, cruel comparisons were made. But I grew to anticipate that, and it's all right. It doesn't really bother me.
That's it.
Hi, Shua. If you would have given the chance to work on the remake of Sharmila ji's any movie,
then I would be opening myself up to direct comparison.
which one would you choose? Which one would you choose, and why?
Now we have to went out. How many films of mine have
I've seen them. I saw them before we went to Harvard. I've seen a lot of them. But I don't want to, as I said, that would be, what's that thing? When you kuladi maro on your own, that would be me opening. I don't want to be compared to her. But I don't really enjoy, can you ask me which of her films have I enjoyed watching the most? Can I change your question? No. No, he's like, no. Okay, I would have loved the opportunity to also...
Which movie you are more inspired from, or which...
Yes. Yes. I can happily say that really for me, Devi was one of them, because it was... I know that you weren't aware of the fact that you were performing, but it was such an impactful role. Of course, the opportunity to work with Satyajit Ray, as well as just... as it's the close-ups, the shots. You imagine yourself being shot like that, being presented like that, making a mark like that. That would have been great fun, I think, to do. Films that I've enjoyed, Aradhana, Chupke Chupke, the songs, they're beautiful. My daughter and I watched them as well and love. And what else? I'm thinking later on. What did you win the national award for?
Mosa.
Mosav. Yeah. So that one. It'd be nice to have a national award.
Maybe also tell them about working together.
Oh, yes.
Life goes on.
We did a movie called Life Goes On, directed by Sangeeta, which we shot in England. And I was nervous because we've done a lot of ads together. We've worked together on multiple sets, but we've never really done a movie before. This was a movie that we did together where Amma plays my mother and I play her youngest daughter. And we have a couple of very sort of interesting scenes and almost confrontational at some point, emotional. They required, really being in character. And I was nervous about that because, of course, we have, an interesting dynamic and we're very close, but whether that translates on screen or not, whether you can actually get that on, when the camera is rolling, I was concerned. And people, of course, when you watch a mother and a real mother and a child performing, they'll have a different expectation of it and they'll be like, oh. So I was, but I really am happy that we share a filmography now. Like I know that you've been a part of many of Bhai's films. A lot of them you die again in the opening scene. But in two of them, no? Yeah. But in this one, dies, but a little bit later in the film.
I remember there's one section where this very angry daughter tells her mother, "Are you mad?" And so I was like, how can I say this? How can I say this to her? I've never spoken to
But
her.
it was also great fun to be able to say things that you normally wouldn't interpret. Anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sharmila ji, this is for you. You were so coming from a household which was so well read, and I would say you were erudite for your when you came into the film industry. How was it interacting with fellow heroines and the heroes of that time? Were you able to have conversations, or you kind of switched off? Or I'm sure that must have been challenging because your history coming from the Tagore family, your kind of upbringing and reading, and throwing the history book at...
I'm so glad that you're talking about being erudite, etc. But, I told you right at the beginning that how films were viewed at my time. And when I worked even with a director who was as world famous as Satyajit Ray, my school, I was going to a Bengali medium school, the principal had a huge objection to that. She felt that if I continue to work after acting in a film in the same school, I would have very negative impact on the children. So I had she gave me the option of either staying on in school or leaving school if I worked in the film. So my father, again, I wasn't asked. My father said, of course, she will leave your school because if you don't allow her to work in Satyajit Ray's films, I don't think the school is worthwhile to go to or whatever. But for the age of 13, I had to make the transition from a Bengali medium school, having no English whatsoever, to a English medium school like Loreto, because I went to live with my parents and left my grandparents behind. And to adjust to that school at the age of 13 was nothing short of, I felt so embarrassed and so ashamed or whatever. But this Mother John Baptist took me under her wing. And after each week, after the weekend, I would have to ask, how did you spend your weekend? If I said wonderful, she would say, no, speak in a sentence. And I would just wanted to kill her, really, and if I was sitting quietly in the library, she would come, flapping her, Mother John Baptist in a habit and sit with me and engage me in conversation. If there were people, I was not allowed to play hockey. I had to, assist her, and she would engage me in conversation. At the end of the year, I caught up with the class, and not only that, she would say, see Sharmila's paper on history, and all the subject that she taught. And again, when I went to Loreto to do history honors, they didn't let me because they said, oh, you're working in films. So I've had this constant struggle with education. And I left, I mean, I left in the 3rd month of my college because Mother Ancilla, the moment I would enter, she said, do history pass course. And I said, no, I want to do honors course. So anyway, I left. And then when I get these PhDs, and the first thing I say that I didn't follow, I mean, I didn't have the privilege that you guys are having learning or like Soha did. I mean, how fortunate that the scholarship of studying in a kind of an organized fashion. So I found my mentors outside of the brick and mortar building, because I don't believe the education is only contained in that building. It goes beyond that. And I found my mentors, and some were indeed people, but also books, cinema, art, etc., and life itself. So I really feel very happy when you say that I'm erudite, etc. And so I don't have that kind of judgmental attitude. In fact, once I told my husband that it was so boring that, I have to go to this party. And Tiger said, well, that's your lack of, why should anybody be boring? Everybody has something to say. It's how you listen to them and how you bring out that quality. Maybe you learn a recipe from somebody, or maybe you learn something. So don't just dismiss people, because after all, in the industry that people we met, there was Ashok Kumar, there was Balraj Sahni, there was Motilal, there was a number of people who were fascinating, really. And even the others who just talked about themselves or played their own music and talked about how many, the week's gross income has been. But even from them, you learned something else, how to survive, So it's in your attitude, really. If you remain a learner all your life and are curious about people and how you engage, and instead of talking at them and saying how clever you are, if you draw them out, then everybody will have something to say, which will help you, which will be a learning process.
Hello. Sharmila ji, first of all, this side, on your left, maybe. Yes. Yeah?
My
Left. Yeah. Hello. Sharmila ji, first of all, a compliment for you. You look amazing and beautiful till date.
It takes a lot of effort, isn't it?
I agree to that. But I have a question
I've
for
got to say what Inaya told me first thing in the morning. Huh? Well, something not quite. What I need to do to my face. Yeah.
Yeah, but my question is for Soha. Soha, I want to know about your journey as an entrepreneur, especially with House of Patodi, and how is it going now?
I'm actually not an entrepreneur. I'm just a model. I get a nice fee, but I don't have equity. But we're working on that. Apparently, if I get equity, I have to share it with my brother, and he's, how Judy said about this generation, doesn't know how to share so much, no? Yeah, he's a bit savvy. So we're working on that. But, I think that now it's interesting how people are embracing entrepreneurship and they're understanding, especially when it comes to working in films and a profession. It's not just about acting. If you want longevity, people are now taking interest in owning things. Ownership has become important, especially writers. And that's what I love most, again, about this OTT space, is that writers are being celebrated and they're becoming the true heroes. And people are exploiting different structures of doing business. And, so that I think is interesting. I've never really explored that. It's something that now in this year, actually, we're looking to do. We're looking to produce now. We're writing and we're exploring that. But as I said, in House of Patodi, I just get paid to turn up and I'm a model.
Hi, good evening. Hi, Sharmila ji and Soha. So I wanted to ask Sharmila ji a question. You are an institution in yourself, and I want to know what is the advice you give the actresses of today and even of women in different other fields?
Well, first thing one learns is not to give advice, because everybody reacts to, they do ask for advice, but when you tell them, they don't really like it. This is what has been my experience. So they want to vent or they want to share perhaps, but everybody has to choose their own way. So it's difficult to give advice to anybody, really, because my journey, my choices that I've made is my own. I cannot really, I can talk about it, but it's for you to completely absorb that. And in today's time, it may not be possible. Correct me if I'm wrong. So has understand these things better. But all I would say that be true to yourself. And if you understand yourself, instead of looking for advice outside of yourself, that too, but most importantly, go inside yourself and understand what makes you tick. And then very firmly stand with it. Don't deny that voice that is asking for something. Because sometimes for various reasons, women are very tentative about expressing their own needs and own desires. And they can easily be coerced or very affectionately told to change their ways or whatever.
Yeah.
So idea is to understand yourself and what you want, and then go ahead and get it in a very sustained way, and not get off that path. So I think that's the only thing I want to share with all the women or all the men also, that it's important to know yourself. You cannot, a lot of people today want to be actors because they think it's such a glamorous profession, and you can buy a car and a house and everything in 3 years, whereas any other profession, it'll take you very long. But you do not understand the fragility, the lot of other challenges. So every profession have their own challenge. Every individual have their own challenge. So I think if you stick to yourself as much as you can, you can make your journey less hazardous, like you're not going against the grain or against the tide. You're making it happen. Of course, you need support from your parents or all the other people who can control or affect you. It's not easy sometimes. But I think if you stick to that, even if your face and how you look also, if you stay more close to yourself, it's better, because you all the time, it's not necessary to be somebody else. I think all of us have potential inside us, and to recognize that dream and that, and I mean, that's the only way. I mean, I've lived my life following my convictions, and I've taken lots of decisions that has gone against the grain at that time, getting married, deciding to have children, because I believe that there's a body clock. There's a time to wear a bikini and there's a time to do something else. So it's the timing of life is very important, and to adapt, to change, to grow with that time, and to keep yourself relevant. So for that, you have to be in tune with your surroundings, learn from everybody. So these things are important, I think, in that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I wanted to also say that, Soha, it's fantastic. You're quite an inspiration, because in spite of being in a filmy background, you've attained your own identity. You've studied, you've done really well, you have your own career, and now you're an entrepreneur. It's really, really amazing.
Thank you.
Hats off to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank Ms. Sharmila Tagore, Ms. Soha Ali Khan, and Ms. Sangeeta Datta for gracing us with their presence tonight. Thank you so much, ladies, for adding to the conversation. Is there one last question? Oh. Okay, sure.
Sorry, वो
शर्मिला जी आदाब। आपके ख़ानदान को और मंसूर अली साहब के ज़माने से मुझे कुछ मौका मिला भोपाल में, जो आप लोगों का ख़ानदान का वहाँ कंट्रीब्यूशन है, उस चीज़ को मेरी एक दरख्वास्त है। छोटी बिया देख रही हैं अभी वहाँ औकाफ़ शाही को, और बस मेरी आपसे ये दरख्वास्त है कि आगे वो चीज़ कंटिन्यू रहे। जिस तरह से आप ने अपनी स्टेट को अपनी ज़ाती मफाद के लिए कभी यूज़ नहीं किया। नवाब साहब के ज़माने से लेके अभी तक मैं देखता आया, जो मैंने अपनी ज़िंदगी में देखा और मेरे ख़ानदान में देखा, आपने अपनी ज़ाती मफाद के लिए वहाँ से कुछ बेनिफिट नहीं लिए, इतनी बड़ी स्टेट होने के बावजूद। और अभी तक औकाफ़ शाही के ज़रिए और दीगर इदारों की सरपरस्ती के ज़रिए जो आप भोपाल शहर को दे रहे हैं, वो आपकी हयात में रहते हुए उसका निज़ाम रहे ऐसा, जो और देर पा रहे। बस मेरी ये दरख्वास्त है आपसे। शुक्रिया।
Thank you very much, and in giving us such responsibility. And yes, I mean, of course, as you know, that after 70, we don't really have very much role to play in Bhopal, but it is my mother-in-law's ancestral home, and we have a lot of connection, and we spent wonderful time there. And of course, we keep in touch with Bhopal quite closely, but it's no longer our state.
Okay, I think we can wrap up now. I've already thanked our eminent speakers for the evening, but before we let you go, our sponsor partners would like to give you a little token of thanks. For our guests tonight, thank you so much for joining us. For our members, we have a fantastic band afterwards if you'd like to join for some dancing. And for our guests, we have some drinks in Cafe Reed if you'd like to join us for that. Thank you so much from the Quorum.
Thank you for organizing this, Soga. Thank you.